Hello, my name is Michael and I come to High Oakham Primary School. And my daddy is a police officer and I like it when Joe Wicks is Scooby-Doo. Hi, my name is Lacey. Hi, my name is William. And we go to High Oakham Primary School. And I like playing with the marbles one. I like playing on the field with my friends. And my daddy works at the police. My mummy is a teacher.
Hi, I am Joshua and I go to High Oakham Primary School and my dad is a key worker and my mum works for Boots and I love the field. Whoa.
Hello, I'm Charlotte and my parents both work for Nottinghamshire Police. My favourite thing that I've done at school so far is rounders.
Hi, I'm Leo and my mummy and daddy work for the ambulance services, paramedics. They take people to A&E when they've had an accident. I have been at school recently and my favourite thing has been weaving Eye of God. Here's a picture. That's all from me and this message is to say stay home, stay safe.
Hi, my name is Ethan and this is my brother Johnson. My mum and dad work for the key workers of police force. Our favourite thing at High Oakham Primary School is rounders.
Thank you, County Council, for keeping us safe.
People, the key workers who are working during this pandemic. Thank you, Mum and Dad and the school. My favourite thing is so I can play with my friends.
Me. Thank you for Miss Lowe and thank you for Miss Smith. And we had lots of fun with belly dancing and painting rocks.
Thank you for keeping our school open. Mr. Bancroft and the cleaners are all fab. I'll have a lot of special memories here.
Thank you to Mrs. Thompson, Mrs. Pye, Mrs. Sheila, Mrs. Kayla. We've been painting, we've had ice cream, we've been outside and we've even had Easter eggs.
Thank you for letting us in the school while my mummy cooks the dinners. We made fairy gardens and we played on the bikes and the teacher made it lots of fun and we made lots of new friends.
My mummy and daddy work for the NHS. My mummy and daddy work for the NHS.
My mum and dad work for the NHS.
Our mum and dad work for the NHS.
My mum and dad are on the front line risking their own lives.
We want you to stay at home to help save lives.
We want to protect our family and would like you to protect yours.
This virus can kill anybody.
You may not have symptoms, but you could still be spreading the virus.
It's important to stay at home and help save lives.
My son Josh recently turned 2. After we moved to the area, I needed to find a new nursery for him. A colleague mentioned that the Notts Help Yourself website had a list of approved childcare providers. The site was easy to navigate and I was able to filter the search to my local area. Notts Help Yourself was intuitive to use and offered me a wide variety of options. The site gave me access to a whole host of opportunities and provided me with a wealth of useful information. It was brilliant to see Josh settling in so well on his first day. I'm happy knowing he's well looked after.
I'm Gemma and this is my husband Paul and we're both foster carers. I think initially we were a little bit anxious ourselves about going to panel. It sounded quite scary, but it wasn't at all. It was just a really friendly chit-chat with a group of people around a table. It was more of a celebration, really, of us being there and of us, wanting to become foster carers. The County Council offer a fair rate of pay, so we get paid dependent on our level of experience. So after you've done it for a while, then your level of pay will go up based on your experience and level of training that you've done. We've also got a network hub, which is a foster carer support group, and it's just an informal get-together. We feel so valued as a foster carer for Nottinghamshire County Council. Everyone's so caring and wants what's best for you as a family. The matching process is really careful, so they listen to our needs, and they would never think of placing a child that wouldn't fit in our environment. As a foster family, we try and just make it everyday normal life, try and bring some stability and love to that child that's staying with us, and give them experiences that perhaps they've not experienced before. We love going out on day trips together, and for example today we've come pony trekking. Nottinghamshire's a great place to foster because we've got so much on our doorstep. There's so much that we can do. I feel really lucky that we're able to foster here.
There is no doubt that without the support from Shared Lives carers, Joe's family would probably have ended up in crisis. But with the support of Julie and Yvette, the family do not have to cope alone, and they now enjoy quality time with Joe on a regular basis.
Helen and Mike's care has been fundamental to Daniel's development, safety and happiness, and my peace of mind. They have been sensitive to Daniel's challenges and needs, as well as myself and my family. I am now widowed, and their support is utterly essential to me and my other son in making us feel Daniel's needs are met. I'm continually in awe and appreciation of the work they do for my son.
Chantal loves visiting Hayley. She says it's fun and exciting. She gets to spend time with someone her own age. Hayley's such a lovely friend to Chantal. The family now have time to go out for meals, walk the dog and just chill.
Family members closest to Sarah have been able to gain great comfort and relief from the fact that Sarah has found a new family where she is happy and enjoying life to the full. The support that Sarah has received from Kelly and Ross have given her own family the time and space for them to better cope and manage through the difficult times.
Gemma's support means everything to Sophie and I. Sophie loves staying at Gemma's.
That's 10 seconds. Are we okay? Thumbs up, they say. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Improvement Change Subcommittee, which has been held remotely, with the majority of members joining the meeting from their own homes. I'm Councillor Reg Adair, and I'm the chairman of this subcommittee. For the benefit of viewers of the live stream, I will now ask the clerk to the committee, Sarah Almond, to list the other members present today.
Thank you, Chairman. So the other committee members present are Councillors John Cotty, Jim Creamer, Kate Fole, Tony Harper, Richard Jackson, David Martin, Diana Meal and Philip Owen, and we also have present Councillor Cutts. As well as myself, we also have the following officers present today. We have the Service Director Marge Toward, the Service Director Nigel Stevenson, Corporate Director Adrian Smith, Interim Head of ICT Mark Davies and Group Manager Sue Milburn. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Sarah. So the next item on the agenda is the appointment of chairman. The item 1 of this note the appointment of by full council on the 11th of June of myself as chairman of this subcommittee for the 2021 municipal year. No vote required. So membership of the committee. Item 2 is to ask members to note the committee membership as listed on the agenda. And then item 3, minutes of the last meeting, 27th of January 2020. Can I ask if the minutes can be agreed? Silence will do. Okay, thank you very much. We got silence, so we've agreed the minutes of the last meeting. Thank you very much. So I go on to apologies for absence. Sarah.
There are no apologies for absence. Thank you.
Okay, declarations of interest. Do any members or officers present have any disclosure of pecuniary interest to declare? Do any members or officers present have any private interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary, to declare? I'll take silence as an agreement. Obviously, we got silence, so that's very good. Thank you very, very much. So the next item on the agenda is item 6, progress report on delivery of improvement and change programs, projects and savings. And I will ask Sue Milburn to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. So, as you'll see, this is a report with quite a lot of detail in the appendices, and that's indicative of the amount of work we've got ongoing at the moment, but it has been summarised in the main body of the report, so we'll focus on that. We also need to acknowledge that the financial situation and approach to transformation and change going forward are changing, and that'll be addressed in a report later on the agenda, but it is obviously important to track current progress and status in the meantime, so that's what this report is about. So, in terms of the report, it includes a portfolio update to the end of Q4 in Appendix A, update on savings projects to the end of May 2020 in Appendix B and C, and change requests in Appendix D and E. So I'm going to take us to point 9 at the bottom of page 1 to start the talk through. This reflects on the impact of COVID-19 and the fact that many projects were put on hold to release staff to support the authorities' response to the pandemic. Appendices B and C reflect that by showing both the current status and also the status of those projects and programmes before they were put on hold, so that you can understand both perspectives of that. In terms of the overall savings, in points 10 to 13, there's a reminder that the aim for overall savings over the 4 years to 2022-23 is currently 24.2 million. In the last financial year, 29 projects with savings values of 15.4 million were completed, with 0.6 million savings requesting write-off. So that leaves us with a future savings total of 9.4 million, against which a further 11 projects with a savings profile of 1.2 million have already commenced. Breakdown of projected savings across the departments is shown in point 13. And then point 14 summarises 2 projects requesting changes to savings profiles. Those are in Appendix D, Housing with Care, which is a reduction of 331,000, and in Appendix E, Better Practice in Supporting Planning for Older Adults, which is 199,000. And both of those, in summary, really are initial assumptions that faced some challenges and have had to be refined. The financial impact has already been addressed by Nigel in the MTSF. So that takes us through to the recommendations after a bit of a gallop through, but clearly there's time for you to ask some questions. It's recommended that the subcommittee considers the departmental improvement and change portfolio update and the quarterly projects and savings update and decides whether any other action is required, and agrees the project change requests outlined in Appendix D and Appendix E. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adair.
All right, okay, sorry. I was on mute, so I'm unmuted now. So I formally move the recommendation, which is included on page 9 of the agenda pack. And do I have a seconder for that, please?
Yes, Councillor John Cotty, Chairman, and I'd like to formally second the recommendations, please.
Okay, thank you, John. So then I'd like to invite views and questions from members. Please indicate who would like to speak using raise your hand facility or by raising your hand to the camera. Have we got Diana first? Okay, I got Diana first. Diana, you're muted.
Thank you for that run through. And also a reminder about muting. I'll get used to this eventually. That I just have one specific question, which is on page 15 of the no, now I lost it myself. Page 15 of the
is that Appendix A?
It's, sorry, yeah, of Appendix A. It's page 21 of Appendix A. Sorry, I'm losing myself here. And this is Programme 8, Investing in Nottinghamshire. And what we have here is the key milestone that's been completed in April 2020, which was to undertake a detailed feasibility work to support the disposal of existing office premises and development of new accommodation to better meet the needs of the council. And then the other two actions around that is to complete a detailed design for new build at County Hall site, West Bridgeford, and submit planning application for new office development at Top Wighay. My query really is that a lot has happened since April 2020. We know COVID is changing working practices, and certainly from the information I have from friends of mine who work in all sorts of different offices, that they're not likely to go back to the old way of turning up to the office every day. Some are looking at working completely from home, others 2 or 3 days in the office, 2 or 3 days at home. And so a lot of organisations, it seems to me, are going through that process. And I would have thought that we as a county council will be going through that process as well, looking at whether we need all the offices that we need, that we currently have. The second thing is I would have thought that investing in new build offices at the moment is not a very financially good thing to do. As far as I can tell, and I admit this is from just anecdotal talking to people, this is not on the basis of a study, that the demand for new offices is actually falling as a result of people adopting, or organisations adopting, new ways of working. And therefore my question is, shouldn't we re-look at that feasibility work before we embark on any new investments in office space?
Okay, Diane, we'll take that, but I'll also ask Kate to ask her question or make her comments as well, please.
Okay, thank you. Do we need to introduce ourselves, or is that being done?
Well, I can see you.
That's the important thing, Reg, clearly. Okay, fine. Right. Okay, just 1 or 2 questions to follow on from Diana. I have to admit, I'm a little bit, I'm quite concerned about the 2 savings targets. I'm looking now into key milestones and the savings target and the change request, which, you know, there are 2 now in the back of the papers on this item. Really, just because, I'll get the words out in a minute. Can I just have some reassurance that this is being properly kind of rigorously debated at the ASH committee? Because it's, you know, this isn't something I'm a specialist at, and I know it just, and I am concerned particularly about the first one. I know it just saying here that there will still be housing and care solutions, and it will carry on. But I'm just a little bit concerned that this is coming to this committee with people, certainly from the opposition side, that don't have the kind of expertise and in-depth understanding to be able to say, well, actually, this is a good idea or not. So some reassurance that is being elsewhere to another committee would be helpful. And just a couple of other things. I notice this is page 15 of the yellow pages. This is commercial. This is the bottom box. Commercialisation of the council's directly provided social care services. It's talking about county enterprise foods. And I wanted to raise that because I would have thought that what the county enterprise foods was really important at the moment for some people. And just again, some reassurance that the investigation or the way, the different ways of kind of working isn't impacting adversely on that service for the people who really need it, and particularly at the moment. And just one final one, and now I'm on, this is still Appendix A, Programme 3, the bottom box. And it refers to developing our approach to predictive analytics, machine learning and artificial intelligence, including our ethical use of data. Again, not my strong point. But there is a comment in the bottom of the box on the other side to say that the timescales for this work have been revised to allow for wider discussion and engagement with the Council's new transformation partner. And I wondered if that's just out of date or if that's something that's happened recently.
Thank you, Kate. Is there any Jim? Jim, you've got a question. You want to come on?
Thank you, Chair. Just unmute myself. Yeah, it's just on page 18, programme 4, about the ICT being complete. But just effectively, nothing is really complete because there's always updates. But linking into Diana's question about housing and office space, I mean, should we be looking at our ICT capability in case it needs to be increased, especially if there's a phase 2 comes? I mean, we've done excellent so far. This meeting sort of proves it. But I just wondered if, as well as looking into the actual office space, we ought to be looking in, is our IT up to standard for whatever may come next? And I'll agree that it's possibly more of an X factor than a guaranteed come next. But are we going to remain up to date and hopefully in advance of any future crisis?
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any other questions before I go back to the officer for comment? Okay, who would like to answer that? Do you want to follow up, Sue, or does some other officers want to pick some of it up?
I can make a start, Councillor Adair, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Meal, in terms of your questions, those are exactly the conversations that are being had at the operational board at the moment. So I think all proposals are being considered against the learning. So I think your point is absolutely right, and that is what is going on at that operational board. I'm not sure what the outcomes of that are yet. I don't know if anyone else in the room wants to contribute on that, but I know those conversations are ongoing. Councillor Fole, in terms of the savings target, I believe they have been debated at Adults Committee, but yes, Nigel's nodding at me, so yes, they have been. In terms of the county enterprise foods, I can't give you an answer on that, but I can come back to you with the detail on it. And in terms of predictive analytics, I think that's referring to Newton, who've been doing some work with us over the last few months. And then that last question in terms of the ICT capability, that is definitely under review at the moment, and Mark, who'll be talking to us later, will probably talk about the learning we've had so far and our approach going forward to make sure we're prepared for what may come next.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Would any other officer like to add any comments to the questions?
If I may, Chairman?
Yes, sure.
Yep,
Nigel.
It's Nigel. Yep, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just on that particular one in terms of the ICT, as part of the Council's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, one of our main core themes is around corporate resilience, and in there was about the ICT. And there's been reports to the 3Rs Committee and to Policy Committee in terms of our approach, in terms of the success, and there's a report elsewhere on this agenda in terms of what we've done with ICT and the improvements we have done and will continue to do in terms of our corporate resilience programme. So hopefully I can assure that Councillor Creamer that we certainly take our experience in terms of ICT and the resilience for ICT very seriously indeed.
Thank you for that, Nigel. Any other comments from anyone? No? Okay, so that's sort of the comments responded to. So if we go back and we take the recommendations and approve the recommendations, please. If there's no hands up, I'll take that as a silence, as an acceptance. Okay, thank you very much.
Chair, sorry, Chair, I did raise my hand.
Did you?
Yes, I'm just going to abstain on this. Just for various reasons. Excellent report. I'm not sure it's gone quite far enough, but the staff I've got no problems with at all. And we congratulate the staff on the report and their work so far. But on this particular occasion, I'm going to abstain.
Well, what we'll do there then is we'll ask Sarah Armand to do a recorded vote for us, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So please note that the votes today will not be recorded in the minutes of the meeting unless 2 or more members request it, in line with the usual recorded vote arrangement. So this is essentially a roll call vote. So if you can just, when I call your name, if you can just say whether you're voting for, against or abstaining. Councillor Adair.
For.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Creamer.
Abstain.
Councillor Fole.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Meal.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Okay, thank you very much. That's well carried. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is item 7, I think. Yep, item 7, and that's to introduce the ICT update. And to introduce this item, I'll hand over to Mark Davis to introduce the report for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a brief report to explain to members and give awareness as to what ICT has been doing to increase the ICT corporate resilience and to ensure that staff have a much more enjoyable and capable, effective working at home over the last few weeks and months. And I'll just go through briefly, and obviously any questions, then please ask at the end. Initially, when we started and everybody went home, our capacity should have been sufficient for remote working, but it was never really planned to have everybody working on a continuous basis. It was more short term if we were doing flooding and having a flood and things like that. So it was quite a strain, and we had the first week was quite difficult. We had to do a lot of work to remove capacity, increase capacity by removing network traffic, which, if members may recall, caused us to turn off video on Skype, and we had to roll out Teams, and it improved things, but it wasn't sufficient. So then we had to, point 4 explains we had to implement a new network remote access solution, which was basically the same as what we had, but we were now having 4 of them because there's now have 2 pairs for the resilience. This took a few days to get up and running, but by halfway through the second week, we were up and running with this, and the capacity proved to be more than sufficient for what we need and has been absolutely operating at sort of optimum for the last 15 weeks and continues to do so. We formalized that now and implemented the productionized solution rather than the temporary solution we had in place. And that will continue there for some time. We had issues where staff had to go home and work, and office-based staff could clearly do that once we got the VPN, the remote access working, but contact center staff couldn't easily do that. And at the time we were asked to go home, only half of the staff could actually work at home. And so some of them were coming into the office, which wasn't ideal. We spent a few days and I think about a week and a half, working with our provider, Daisy, to modify the telephony system so that the contact center staff could work from home remotely. And once that had happened, then 100% of the staff were actually working at home and operating very well, and have continued to do so. We had the same situation with the emergency duty team, which is a group that 24/7 man the telephones, but they've done it from an office where the phone goes direct to the office, and it was really quite old technology. A couple of the team were older members and they of staff, and they really needed to be at home isolating. So to make them safe, we spent some time to implement a telephony system that would allow them to redirect their phones to their home phones and their mobiles, and they could work remotely. I think it's my understanding that they have actually now chosen not to do so, but that facility was put in place. Microsoft Teams was something that we'd talked about within the council for quite some time, and had taken a while to get to any kind of speed of rollout. But due to the pandemic, we rolled it out to 4,000 devices in just about a week, which was pretty good going. And judging by today, you're all now familiar with Teams, which brings me on to the virtual committee meetings. I think when this was first muted, it was a little bit fearful within ICT in that how can we get so many people operating effectively, providing democratic processes, allow democracy to continue. And it did take a little bit of time, but I think you'll agree that it's working quite well now, and is a safe and very effective operating model. We also had our ICT help desk. Now, they'd always had the ability to work from home for quite some time. So when they were asked to go and work from home, they could do so quite easily. But what we did do is extend the hours at the weekends to map onto the same working practices that other areas were doing, to give them support. And we've also operated over bank holidays. And finally, there's a request from one service area that they wanted to communicate with their younger citizens who weren't going to have a laptop, couldn't use Teams, and would much rather use WhatsApp. We've allowed this now to be rolled out to corporate mobile devices, and anybody in the authority can use WhatsApp either for messaging between colleagues or for actually communicating with their younger citizens. And so the recommendation is that the committee considers if there are any actions arising from this report. And any questions, of course. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adair, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Just muting yourself or something, isn't it? So anyhow, thank you, Mark. So I formally move the recommendation which is included on page 49 of the agenda pack. And do I have a seconder, please?
Yes, Chairman, it's Councillor John Cotty, and I will formally second the recommendation on page 49.
Thank you, John. And I would like to invite views and questions from members. Please indicate if you'd like to speak using your hand facility or by raising your hand to the camera. And I've got Kate first. Yeah.
Thank you, Reg. I just wanted to say thank you. When you see the scope and the speed and the hard work that you've put into all this, and over bank holidays and weekends as well, it's absolutely very, very impressive. And I think the flexibility around, you described WhatsApp. So I've spoken to the manager for the youth service from Bogle, and he's been very kind of complimentary about that kind of interaction. So thank you for this. I think it's shown the authority in one of its very best lights to be flexible, responsive, and get on and do the job, even though sometimes it requires long hours of work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Philip.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to pick up one point that was made. The Microsoft Teams now seems to be working extremely well. I've been part of committee meetings and have also chaired committee meetings, and there don't seem to be too many issues. But not all outside bodies are on Microsoft Teams. Some use Zoom and some use Skype. I had a meeting a week, 10 days ago with the government minister, and I think that was on Skype. And I even went to the trouble, as I was going to be talking to a government minister, of putting a proper shirt and tie on, because I thought, as I'm representing the county council, I ought to look the part. However, we didn't have a camera facility available to us. All we had were microphones, which, yes, you can manage, but it's not as effective as if you can see somebody face to face. And I'm just wondering if there is any intention to try and improve those two aspects, so that when we are working with other organisations outside of the council, we're able to communicate in the way that we are doing this morning.
Thank you, Philip. Any other members asking for anything? I don't see anything on the screen, so can I ask you, come back to you, to Mark, and to follow up and respond to those comments, please?
Yeah. Yes, certainly. Yeah, Councillor Owen, I think I'll talk about Skype initially, and I think I appreciate what you're saying, because you're talking about other organisations inviting you to a meeting using the technology they have. So I'll park that for a moment. But I think if we look at it from the technology we have, we use Skype. It was the old Microsoft Link product. It became known as Skype, and it's Microsoft's old, if you like, communication tool. The way that the video works in Skype is actually a lot more work intensive, and Microsoft themselves recommend that people move to Teams. So that doesn't answer your question, though. It explains why we're not using Skype, and ultimately we will remove Skype from the system at some point, but clearly not until there's a general lack of use across the organisation and across the country. because we do need to talk to other people. So I think perhaps that's a good point, really. We hadn't necessarily thought about you talking to externals and them inviting you. So it's something we could look at, certainly. And there are areas within the authority where we have allowed Skype to have video. I think legal had a requirement for it. So we did give them permission to do that, permission or something. We granted them access so they could do that. And I'd be happy to expand that slightly. I don't want to do it corporately because it will then reduce our network capability. But I think for individuals that have more reason to speak externally, then it's certainly something we could look at. So we could add to that. That's not a problem. Something to pick up after this meeting. With regard to Zoom, I personally have no reason why you shouldn't be using Zoom if you're invited to a Zoom call, but corporately it's not the best platform. It's the same reason we use Outlook as a product rather than some other mail product. There are many mail platforms, but we use a corporate one which has got full support and security and capability. So yes, you can use Zoom. They've obviously had a lot of security implications. So as an individual joining a call, I would have no reason for you to not use Zoom, and we could look at that. I would never recommend that we as an authority use Zoom as a corporate product. It's not a corporate product. It's not capable of that support model. It's not secure in that way. There was a lady on the TV only the other day from Zoom saying how they've recruited, I think, 120 security people to try and boost their security capability. That tells me they've got a problem. So it's not something I would like our meetings to be using. But by all means, you could join a Zoom call, no problem at all.
Any other comments? No? Okay, thank you. So let's move on then and we just to do the formalities, and Sarah, can we do the voting, please, and the recommendations, please? I'm not mute.
Thank
Sarah?
you, Chairman. Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Right.
So just to remind members, the motion has been moved and seconded, and the motion is to consider whether there are any actions arising from the report. So I will call names in turn, and if you can say once again whether you're voting for, against or abstaining. Councillor Adair.
For.
Councillor Cotty.
For.
Councillor Creamer.
Sorry, had to unmute. For.
Thank you. Councillor Fole.
For.
Councillor Harper.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Meal.
For.
Councillor Owen.
For.
That's unanimously agreed.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we all agree that when this all broke out, the team did a marvellous job for us, and obviously there's set new challenges, and those new challenges now we've got to address those as well to take us forward. Okay, so then can we move on to agenda item 8, an update on progress with future approach to transformation and change. So I think I've got to ask Adrian to introduce this one.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I'm introducing this report in my capacity as the County Council's Deputy Chief Executive rather than in my usual place department role. And the report gives you an update on the work that we've been doing around our approach to transformation and change, which you'll remember we touched on briefly back in your January meeting. In the days before COVID, and the days before all of the disruption that caused, we had set out on agenda to look at a long-term approach to transformation and change that would not only help reform the way the organisation worked, but also look to introduce some new cross-cutting programmes of transformation that could help us meet what was then a comparatively modest MTFS gap that we had over the 3-year medium term. Of course, what we hadn't planned for was that within a few weeks, COVID would reach our shores, and the work that we had designed with our partner Newton Europe would have to undergo quite significant change. So we are fortunate in some respects that we were able to keep most of that work on track, albeit we had to do it using a lot of different means. Not least, we were robbed of the opportunity to have the kind of workshops and engagement that we'd planned but we've made use, as you were just discussing, of a number of different digital tools. But of course, what COVID also allowed us to do was to test and trial some of the new and different ways of working that the work with Newton Europe was very much designed to introduce into the organisation. So the report sets out for you a little bit of background and context about the way that we've progressed the work around transformation and change, and the phase 1 diagnostic work that we've done. But it focuses on introducing a new model for transformation for the organisation. And that new model is set out in some detail from pages 53 onwards in your pack. But it also gives you a little bit of detail about the proposed or the emerging themes for transformation, which have come through that phase 1 work. I'll touch on those in just a second. So in terms of our approach to transformation and change, it's really important, I think, that we all acknowledge and stress, building on the update you had from Sue earlier, that this isn't by any stretch a broken system. And actually, the model of transformation and change that we've had in the organisation has served us incredibly well, not least in helping close the financial gap, in excess of £250 million over the last 10 years, but also in terms of trying to adapt services to meet the needs of residents and businesses. But I think we would all agree that the context for transformation and change has changed quite significantly, not just because of COVID, but through the use of, or the opportunity to use, new and different digital tools, the opportunity to make use of data, and to do much more kind of predictive or modelling or forecasting work into the longer term, but also an acknowledgement that we had probably taken it as far as we could go as an organisation to drive change within departments, and a very strong desire from the administration that we now look much more holistically across the organisation, joining up around cross-cutting transformation and change. And so to help with that, one of the first steps that we've mapped out in the report is to try and better define our use of terminology, because this is inherently complicated stuff. It's quite techy, but we sometimes use words interchangeably, which doesn't help. So in paragraph 11, we've made an attempt to differentiate between some of the words that are used in this field. So firstly, we expect and seek the responsibility of every officer in the council to engage in continuous improvement. So that means every day we shouldn't just accept that this is the way things are done, but we should try and do what we do better every day, do it better tomorrow than we did today, and so on. But that we then see a distinct process around service improvement to improve the way we provide existing services, particularly taking on board feedback from regulators, be that Ofsted, for example. And that's different to change, which is an alteration to a system or a service. That might be bringing in some new technology, or it might be adapting or responding to a changing pattern of need. But that too is different to transformation, which fundamentally changes the way we achieve outcomes in a given area, predominantly by working in a more joined up or cross-cutting way. And I think just by starting to try and define our terms a little bit more explicitly, that will help us as we then help and work across the organisation and our partnership to take transformation forward. So we've talked for a number of months, perhaps years in the organisation, about then some principles or components of a new model for transformation, and those are now set out in section 14 of your report. And there's a whole range of different kind of stakes in the ground that we're proposing to put, and we'll be seeking your support for, which would lock in an approach that will then require us to put further detail on the model, and then ultimately to look at capacity and resources that we have in the organisation to take our new approach to transformation forward. It's centred around the introduction of a new strategic insight unit, something we've looked at. Newton Europe have helped us define and shape, and we've borrowed and looked at good practice that exists in other, not just county councils, but authorities around the country. And that would help us really get a grip of how we do data insight forecasting, and use things like data science either to help us define policy or to help us drive transformation, but also to help equip frontline managers and officers who are making kind of operational decisions day to day to make more optimal decisions that will work for residents in the longer term. And that new unit would be built out of a number of functions that we've got in the council, but also require us to look very closely at the learning and development, the workforce development that's required so that we equip our people and our organisation with the skills that will be required to deliver that function going forward. There's also a recognition here that the level of transformation and change that we've already got, which you heard about earlier on the earlier item, plus all of the transformation that has been invoked as a response to COVID, plus all of the transformation and activity that is being brought forward as part of the recovery from COVID, plus the cross-cutting transformation that we want to see in the organisation, not least to help close the now significant MTFS financial gap that our Finance and Major Contracts Management Committee discussed earlier in the week. There's clearly now a need for us to look at the senior leadership capacity and a proposal here to increase that by introducing an additional service director in the organisation that would work with members and take responsibility for this strategic insight unit to help drive this new transformation model and the programmes that will sit within it into implementation and ultimately completion. So there's a lot of detail in this report, but let me touch finally, Chairman, if I may, just on some of the emerging themes that have come from the phase 1 diagnostic work that we have managed to do despite all the attention that we've paid to COVID in partnership with Newton. So they're set out in paragraph 19. We're not seeking any decisions from committee at this stage. We just wanted to share with you some of the emerging thinking that's come forward. So firstly, there's a theme emerging around the strategic commissioning of care services and placements. And this centres on our ability to take a longer term and systematic and insight-driven view of strategic commissioning, so that when, say, we're engaging with children and families, we don't just think about the placements or the support or the services that they need now, but we think about that over a life course. And the work that we've done with Newton and with colleagues in children's and adult services, particularly around things like preparing for adulthood, is starting to highlight where there are opportunities through a stronger approach to strategic commissioning for us not only to improve outcomes for children, families and adults, but also to do that in a more cost-effective way, which of course will help close the financial gap that we have. The second theme we've grouped around ambitious outcomes, and that's partly a recognition of the progress we've made, whether that's in adults or in children's with our good rating from Ofsted, but it's also a recognition that we aspire not to be good, but to be great. And there are some parts of the county where some of our teams do achieve great outcomes, but that's not necessarily consistent across all teams that we've got in the organisation. We've got to recognise we're a very big organisation, and when you're taking our commission services too, getting that kind of consistency is a real challenge. So that again is how do we equip managers with the data, the insight, the modelling, but also the skills and the workforce capacity and capability to get the most ambitious outcomes for all of our residents, which again would also be more efficient in terms of life costs that we build in, but also and let's be frank, most importantly, better in terms of the outcomes we achieve for residents. And then a final theme that's emerged through the diagnostic work so far is around resident experience. And we can see, and I think I've been in this committee and discussed with this with you before, there are opportunities that we haven't yet fully implemented around things like automation. So we know residents will increasingly demand and expect that they can access council services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through apps or online systems, and quite rightly, they can in a number of other walks of life. So there's still scope for us to do that here. But fundamentally also, there's an opportunity for us to be able to track the customer journey that people go through when they engage with the county council, from their first contact with services often when they go through an assessment and they have to tell us their story about the things they need, all the way through to the different engagements they have with different services in the council, and to look at how we can better join those things up, how we can make them more streamlined, how we can remove any duplication, and how we can make sure that that's a much better resident experience for the individual, but also we therefore reduce our costs by doing that in a more streamlined way. So there's a number of programs of work that are ongoing, and as I said, I'm not coming today to give you the full detail about those themes of transformation yet. I expect we'll be bringing those forward in the summer once we've done some further work around business cases. But the recommendations we are seeking your support for at this point are on page 57 of the pack, predominantly focusing on approving that new approach for transformation and change, approving the establishment of that additional senior leadership post I referred to earlier, and then agreeing to receive the detail on those business cases in the autumn. Thanks, Chairman.
On mute. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you for that detailed delivery of that paper, which is absolutely important going forward because of the things and how we have to think differently after COVID as well. So it's really important that we get that on board. So the recommendations are: approve the proposed model for transformation, improvement and change as set out in the body of the report, approve the establishment of the Service Director post to lead on transformation, improvement and change with immediate effect, and agree to receive a further report with business cases for transformation and change programmes and proposals for resourcing the transformation model at the next meeting. And I propose that. Do I have a seconder for that, please?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor John Cotty, and I will formally second the recommendations on page 57.
Thank you, John. So now we're open for debate. And Richard Jackson, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's to support the paper, and I think just to recognise in the last 4 or 5 months, with all the work that's gone on protecting residents through this crisis, that the work that's actually still taken place on this change programme is quite something. And I wanted just particularly to mention part 2 of the recommendation, which, as you can see, talks about an additional service director post, and I can understand that sounds maybe counterintuitive when we need to save a lot of money, but I think it is absolutely vital. First of all, it's from within existing budgets, so this isn't new cash that we're asking for to take somebody else on. This is money that's been found within existing budgets. But I think it's necessary because we need someone who can be dedicated to this role, and we've got excellent senior leadership team across the council, but they've all got jobs and day jobs to do, and it'll be important that they are concentrating on delivering the savings we're going to need to find within their own departments, and having someone with this kind of strategic overview of transformation and change, I think, is going to be important. So really, it's just to thank officers for the work that's gone on in the last few months, and to support the paper, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Kate.
Thank you, Chairman. And yes, thank you. I agree with the work that's been done on this and the work that's going on in transformation and change. It can't be easy, and I think it's commendable. But we do have a number of concerns with some of this, I have to say. Just to run through them as quickly as I can. I mean, on the page 56 of the report, this is paragraph 19. The resident experience, that's great. It's good to see that in there. My concern is that there doesn't seem to be an awful lot in terms of consultation with our service users in this. That might be implicit, it might just not be made obvious, but it would have been nice to have made it more obvious to see, actually, if we're going to transform our services, is what people really want, what they're asking for. The other couple of things I was going to raise, I do have concerns about this post, and I can see there is logic in it, and I can understand why you've arrived at this position. But to make this transformation work in the massive scale and in the way that embed it in the way that you want it, that is a huge job that's got to be across the department. And so many times we've had sentences like this is the top of page 55, paragraph 15. Change to create a culture and capability for service change. That crops up again and again. And I just wonder if one new service director can do that. I wonder if this is the right approach. I'm also concerned that if you have this capacity in the team, what other options were looked at? The other options considered is a bit thin in this document. Is a new director really the way forward? If you have that capacity, why isn't it being used elsewhere, perhaps across the different departments? I'm a bit worried as well why this didn't go to policy committee. That happened very recently. This is a massive report where really all the kind of senior members across parties ought to be party to this. And although me, Dana and Jim will do our best, we don't represent the whole of the front bench team in opposition. This really, in my view, should have gone to policy committee. Whether that's coming up later or not, I don't know. But okay, just one other thing. Reference has been made both in an earlier report and in this one is to Newton Europe. And the implication I'm taking from that is that they're still involved. So I'd just like to understand where we are with Newton Europe, if any more work is to be considered with them, and how much that's likely to cost. I think that's me done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Jim.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that unmuting it. Kate's made up the main points, but it's just a little bit concerning in the report. I mean, it may be there and I've missed it, but it mentions COVID, it mentions the things we've had to do, but nowhere in the transformation programme does it actually mention doing it safely and with safety measures, etc. And at this particular time, thanks to COVID, I would have thought that would now be at least mentioned integrally, that any transformation would actually be safe, literally be safe. I'm sure it will be in the minds to be safe, but it's not made clear here. And I wouldn't like to see us rushing for a transformation of change of something, and it's not instantly marked as safe. Safety is not really mentioned in it, and I think that's my main point. I mean, Kate brought up the actual main issues we've got, but that's a niggling one. I'm sure the officers do take it into consideration, but it doesn't seem to be foremost in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Diane.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. I found this very helpful, actually, report, and your explanations, Adrian, very, very helpful. In particular, the definitions that you put down here, which clearly say that actually this isn't just being the proposal, isn't just something that's happening at the top of the organisation, but we're still looking at transformation across the whole organisation. I think my main concern, however, is this is a medium to long-term process, and one that needs to take into account what's been happening through COVID as well. There will have been some culture changes and changes in expectations from our residents around this whole COVID process. And my real concern, as I expressed in finance yesterday, was that we're facing a £26 million hole in our finances next year, and that we need to do something a bit more urgently, not just wait for transformational, cultural change, but that we need to actually be grappling with this now. I see that you're also looking at the appointment with immediate effect, and I'm assuming, therefore, there's somebody that's being transferred from another job to do this job. So I just a query about that, because presumably it's quite difficult to appoint new people at the moment. And maybe if we're looking at appointing somebody from outside the organisation, then that's maybe later on in the year, a question there. The other thing is on the proposed programmes of work. I can see that in our finances, the biggest holes and the greatest pressures are around care services and placements. Again, I can see care services changing in the future, partly out of COVID, partly out of, hopefully, there is something coming from government about where social care is going, but I wouldn't hold my breath, but anyway, something that's coming out. And so I can see that looking at that expenditure on commission services is something that should be done now. I'm not too sure that it needs a new director to make that happen. I would have thought that could be done through our existing teams around that. The other outcomes that you're looking at are far longer term. So a bit of a question and a bit of a comment really there.
Mute now. Sorry. Thank you, Diana. Tony.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to thank all the officers for all of their hard work in putting this together. I'm chairman of the department that's been at the cutting edge of the COVID-19 pandemic. I've been living and breathing it. I've seen all the good hard work that all our officers have put into it. I've met residents and I fully support this paper. Let's get on with it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Tony. And David.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a great piece of work. It's a very complicated piece of work. And obviously the transformation for change, the COVID pandemic is going to have a massive impact on the way that the council services are delivered and the way that the public expect to receive them as well. So technology is only going to enhance the delivery of that service, which is precisely what it's intended for. But also as well, I concur with Councillor Meal over all her fears and worries about going forwards, because I think she's spot on with that. And I think some of the other programmes across the council will have to have a much more diligent approach. And so I agree with I do actually agree with the post that you're creating, because it does need a more microscopic approach going forwards. But some of the other broader aspects of the council's policy going forward, like the building programme, surely will be impacted by how we technologically evolve going forwards. And I think, you know, the impact on the MTFS, the building programme will have, it could be quite considerable. So I think that would be one of the main areas that I would be looking at, revising the building programme for the County Council going forward, because of the impact on the MTFS. And as a result of COVID, the technology enhancement expected and delivered by the council and expected by the residents.
Okay, thank you, David. Thanks to everyone for all your comments. So, Adrian, would you like to sum them up, please, and respond?
I'll certainly do my best, Chairman. Thank you. So let me try and just run through them in the order that they were raised. So I think, yes, it's not made explicit in this report, Councillor Ford, but I think we've got a good track record of user engagement, co-design, bringing service users into the heart of design of whether it's policy or services. And I would expect as we move into that phase in more detail, there'll be various different ways and means of doing that. Of course, that's not been a key feature of the phase 1 diagnostic, which has been predominantly based on data and case reviews and things like that. But certainly as we move into design, I would expect it would be a component of the model. I'll come back to, I'll take all the points about the new service director post together. The question as to whether this relates to policy or improvement and change, I think kind of welcome the comments from you on that respect. My colleagues in Legal and Democratic Services, I think, were confident that this report and the recommendations fell within the remit of this committee, so we've brought it forward here. I know we've discussed the improvement change programme and the approach to transformation here on many previous occasions, so I think that's why we've continued to report it into here. But of course, it's a subcommittee of policy committee, so there's an opportunity for referral should members feel that's necessary. The work with Newton has been a core component of getting us to the place that we've reached, both on the key deliverable in the spec, which was around that new transformation model, but also doing that the deep dives that we will have discussed when we met back in late January, and that's what's helped put all of the data together that's now underpinning the development of the business cases I referred to. In effect, that phase 1 specification has come to an end, and there was always a gateway then for us to consider what, if any, further work we would require from Newton in order to deliver the proposals that emerged through that work. And we haven't reached that point yet to form a view. That will be subject to the business case development work that happens over the summer, and no doubt will be the subject of reports we bring forward for you in the autumn. Jim, I can reassure you that doing things safely in response to COVID is probably our number one in terms of principles at the moment. And again, forgive me, we report into a number of different committees, so we discussed that with the Resilience, Recovery and Renewal Committee that met on Thursday last week. That remains paramount in all of the work that we do. So too does it in terms of the way that we design and adapt services that we deliver for residents going forward. And I think we've performed exceptionally well during COVID thus far, and that's now, I think, a default part of our operating model going forward. And Dan, I think you reflect on a really important point through here, and I think it is referenced in the early part of the report. We very much want to springboard forward from what we've achieved through COVID. We did have a debate as a leadership team and with committee chairs about how do we embed the learning that we've achieved, and how do we kind of hold on to some of the new things that we've discovered or reinvigorated during COVID, and build them into our model going forward. And there was nobody who saw the value in going back to the old ways of working that we had pre-COVID and then thinking about moving forward for transformation. We're all absolutely in the place of seeing this as a springboard to where do we go from here. And that again is partly why we're not least obviously all the work we've had to do through COVID, but we would have liked to have had those business cases by this point of the calendar year. Clearly we're not at that point, but that allows us the opportunity to then embed the learning and the things that we've achieved through COVID and build them into the business cases that we take forward. And it picks up on the point you referenced about changed expectations that we've got from residents. It picks up and reflects the kind of reinvigorated relationships we've got with community and voluntary sector organisations, with schools, who can be a key part of our early help programme and so on. So they're now needing to be designed into those cross-cutting programmes and business cases we'll bring forward. But you're also right that there is a real urgency about next year's financial challenge. Councillor Jackson's chaired the Finance and Major Contracts Management Committee, which have discussed this in some detail. But of course, we've set off a process in the organisation now to look at how we can bridge that gap in next year's budget and the bigger gap in the NTFS overall. But it's really important that we try to do that in the context of what we're trying to achieve over the longer term. So there'd be little value in making significant changes or cuts or reductions to things that are core components of the longer term model. So we're trying to twin track those two processes over the coming months. And just then in terms of the additional senior leadership capacity, I think we've debated this long and hard as a leadership team, and we've debated it long and hard with members and the committee chairs. I think the conclusion we've drawn is we need that additional locus of control that will sit as part of the corporate leadership team in the Chief Exec's department and have organisational reach across all portfolios and all departments to try and help bring together those cross-cutting programmes of transformation and to provide that kind of single locus of leadership, because a lot of this will come bottom up, but you need that senior leadership to help unlock that and to then be able to bring it together in a kind of coherent way so that it doesn't get stuck in departmental or group silos. And so the point about bringing it forward with immediate effect is so that we can get on with, firstly, the process of sourcing credible candidates for that role. But given the urgency, it may well be that we set up a process to look internally and to see whether there are candidates who can step into that role on an interim basis to allow us to get up and running and get those programmes of work going, whilst we take our time to do that work, which is kind of more within the HR and workforce world around sourcing, recruitment, but also the ongoing impact that will have on structures and so on and so forth within parts of the Chief Exec's department. But we simply don't have time to wait to do all of that before we create the capacity that's required for both the urgent and the longer term work that's set out in the report. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Adrian. Thanks for that detailed response, and hopefully that satisfies some of the minds and the queries to go forward. But it's a challenge. It's a massive challenge for the CLT team to take forward, and we as members to be able to support them in doing so. Okay, so that is, we've done the recommendation, so I would just, to get your support for that, I'm going to ask Sarah Allman to read out the votes.
Thank you, Chairman. So once again, when I call your name, if you can say whether you're voting for, against or abstaining. Councillor Adair.
For.
Councillor Cotty.
For.
Councillor Creamer.
Abstain.
Councillor Fole.
Abstain.
Councillor Harper.
For.
Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Meal.
Abstain.
Councillor Owen.
For.
6 for and 3 abstentions.
So that's been carried, and thank you very much for carrying that and getting it through. So that's the end of the programme. The only thing we haven't got in front of us is a work programme for the subcommittee, and this is currently being prepared with everything else that we've just discussed to go forward, and this will be brought to the next meeting in September. So we'll get a proper transformation programme of work going forward then for the rest of 2021. So having said all of that, then that concludes the business of the meeting, and thank you all for attending, and to those viewing online, this meeting is now closed.
Thanks, Raj. Thank you, Chair.